What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Again, we're going to be doing a show today talking about some retro physical media, talking about some big physical media releases that I think are part of the history of physical media. And we're going to be talking about some more horror DVDs today. And who better to have with me today talking about this specific topic is someone who was in the mix when this was going on. I was in the mix. You were in the mix. This is Wes from deadpit.com hanging out with me, my boy. What is up, CK?
What is going on, man? Yeah, I've been around a long time in the physical media community. We're going to talk some DVDs today. And like you've been talking about on your channel, I think DVDs, like everything comes back around again. Vinyl came back, cassette tapes are coming back. I don't know if VHS ever fully left. People go crazy over VHS still to this day.
They did for a bit, man, because I can remember man, and I'm sure you remember, there was a point in time where DVDs were really hot, and all of a sudden these video stores were like transferring everything to DVD from VHS. So you'd walk into these stores and it was like they were giving that shit away, like $1 a piece just to get this stuff out of there. So I was buying quite a bit at that point, to kind of round out a lot of my VHS collection because I'm like, oh my God, it's so cheap. I can get this from these video stores. And then years went by, a couple of years went by, and then I was still living at home. So my DVD collection was just getting so massive that I had shit piled everywhere. And I'm like, this is not going to work. So I needed to figure something out. And I looked over and I had this big VHS shelf. And I'm like, well, you know what? VHS is dead. It's done. I don't ever watch it. No one cares about it anymore. This shit's getting given away. You go to yard sales, it was like VHS coming out the ass. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take everything I own on DVD and I'm going to just put it down and sell it because, I'm already upgrading all this stuff. And, I did keep some important childhood stuff. Like I kept all the Elm Street stuff, all the, the Friday the 13th stuff, a lot of stuff I had as kids, like Ninja Turtles and all that. But I remember selling all my VHS, probably 90% of them for hundreds of tapes, couple hundred tapes for like $80 to some dude on Craigslist. And it was just like, I needed to clear it out. And a couple of years went by and all of a sudden I started seeing the resurgence of VHS collecting. They were doing documentaries like Adjust Your Tracking and all that other stuff that came out. And I was like, then I started to get that FOMO of like, what the hell did I do? I wish I still had this stuff. And still to this day, there's stuff that I don't own that I'm like, man, I can't believe I never kept that. And the big one for me is that damn Frankenhooker talking box, like want a date, you'd press the button. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking getting rid of that?
And it still worked, you said at the time, right?
Yeah, as far as
That's
I believe it did. And the quality of the case was pretty nice. Like, I mean, it wasn't wrecked or anything. And I don't know what the hell I was thinking that I would have gotten rid of that. And I've been trying to get it back ever since. But man, that thing's to get that in decent condition with that works is like you're talking hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
It's wild with the VHS too, because even some of the newer VHS, like Anchor Bay, when they were coming out with VHS in the later years, that stuff's even going for, because I was like, oh, I don't have the Madman VHS that Anchor Bay did. I'm going to try to, it's probably cheap right now. It's 20 or 30 bucks. This was a VHS tape from 2000, 2001, something like that. So it's very difficult to get any sort of good deals on VHS tapes. You can do it. You have to be pretty quick. You have to have some particular save searches on there. You may be able to find something, but most of this stuff is outrageous nowadays. And I think the DVD market is becoming that way as well with some of these titles.
It could be. And, I've been saying that because like you said, is that things come back around. I mean, Jesus, man, Jenko jeans are back and they're going for hundreds of dollars. I mean, if you would have asked me which style of clothing that I ever wore in my life would never come back, I would probably say that.
I'm noticing even the females are wearing like the baggy jeans again.
100%. It's wild. So then I'm like, it's not that wild then when you're talking about DVDs and stuff because the nostalgia's there. There's still some really cool additions and companies are doing some really cool stuff back then that I think is just, from a collectible standpoint, some of these things mean a lot to collectors. And what we're going to talk about today is something that's so silly, but at the time, if you were a horror collector, these things freaking were a bombshell drop on the community because the internet wasn't like it is now. There was no Instagram that was telling you everything that was coming out all the time. And these kind of came out of nowhere. I remember seeing it on like a blog post or something somewhere, maybe on Facebook or whatever. Or maybe it was like one of those like shock till you drop sites or something like that. And
Message
somebody
boards back in
found,
the day.
yeah, the message boards. It was like 2012. And all of a sudden someone said, I just found a Lionsgate 8 movie pack in my Walmart dump bin with all these movies that never ever had a DVD release. And that shook the freaking community, man. Like, I'm here in the Northeast, you're down south. You felt it, I felt it, and it was just absolute insanity because it to get things to just kind of come out of nowhere just wasn't. I don't know. It just felt so different. I don't know. What was going through your mind when you heard about these Lionsgate 8 movie pack sets with all these movies
Right.
that we've all been like dreaming about getting on
Yeah,
DVD at some point?
the strange thing is a lot of people now in the physical media community, you've got press releases that come out for everything. So you know the date it comes out, how much it's going to be, what all's going to be on it or whatever. But back in 2012, these particular releases just popped up. Nobody knew that they were coming out. There was Blood Diner in one of the sets, which Michael Felcher, we were told that he was working on a special edition of that by itself, and this was a year or two before the set came out, and evidently Lionsgate just put the kibosh on it and silently added it to one of those multi-packs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting how, all that came to be, and basically they were just thrown out there unannounced. Hey, here it is. It's like $10 a pop or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it become a scavenger hunt for the hardcore horror fans trying to find these because not all of the Walmart stores carried them.
You're exactly right. And the movie and the packs kind of in question. There's two main ones, and they kind of did some stuff after this, but the two big ones are this horror collection 6-pack and this horror collection 8-pack. Now, these two were the ones that everybody was going ape for because they were finding them just in those bins. It wasn't even on the shelf. It was just buried in those bins. And I can remember when like the word came out, I ran to my local Walmart. I couldn't find them. I ran into another Walmart. I think I came across one of them, and I didn't care how many of these things I came across, but I bought every single one I found because I knew that people were going nuts for them. And I think, like we've talked about before, when we mentioned about doing the show, I think I might have sent you one. I think I sent Pizal one. I sold some to people. I threw some on eBay. I mean,
yeah,
if you found a lot, you were lucky because there was a lot of people that were just after these things, and they weren't at all the Walmarts. And what made these so crazy, like you said, is like the just multi-packs with horror movies on it. But you look at this, Blood Diner never had a release. 976 Evil 2, which still does not have a release, and it had a release here. Ghoulies 3, which is like still one of the only ways to get this, right? Chud 2 at the time, this was on this. So these were movies that nobody had seen since the VHS days and now popping
The Unholy,
up.
I think, was on there. That hadn't been
The
out.
Unholy as well. So it was just wild. And I know one of the big stories with you is like where you were when you actually heard about this, because that's another reason I want to talk, because I remember the story where you're like, I know exactly where I was when we heard about this because everybody just started going crazy and we ended up running to Walmart from where we were at.
Yeah, there was like 2 or 3 carloads of people at a Horror Hound weekend show. And I guess they were posting online on the Dead Pit board on Facebook or whatever it was at the time. And Felcher was with us. And he was like, what? How is that possible, right? So we went to probably 3 or 4 different Walmart supercenters in the area. And I don't recall, there may have been one of those sets that was there. Wasn't there another set that had Beyond Reanimator or something like that?
You know what? There might have been. There was a couple different sets, maybe that did, but the only other one that I have that was that I had from part of that was this weird set with like Bloody Murder 2, that like fake Jason movie or whatever. It had
Children
a movie called
Living Dead.
Junior, Severed, Children Living Dead, Carnivore, Deadly Species, Creepy Crawlers. Like these were part of this, but like people weren't going nuts for these ones. But I mean, it was still pretty cool at the time because some of these movies had some standalone editions, but they weren't regularly.
When they were throwing what was it, 2 or 3 movies per disc? on there?
Yeah, there was like 3 movies per disc, I think, on some of these. So like if you look inside here, like look at that nice eco case there. You had 4 movies on this first disc. 4 movies. You had 976 Evil 2, Ghoulies 3, Chud 2, Waxwork was on this one, and this second disc here was Slaughter High, Class of 99, Chopping Mall, and Holy. So I mean that alone, like what a lineup for this 8-pack of
You should
DVDs.
put like one of those on an OLED TV and see what it looks like. One of those movies now.
It's gonna probably
But
be
I
so
mean,
terrible.
at the time they didn't have anything for a lot of these titles but the VHS tape, so this was still a gigantic, it was the best way to watch the movie, gigantic improvement over a VHS, and you get all those movies for $10. If you found it in Walmart, of course. I know some people were paying way more than that on eBay.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of that stuff, like people had never seen, never had the chance to see, like Blood Diner before, or Ghoulies 3, which is great. It's probably one of the best Ghoulies movies. And hopefully, that's most of those titles in those sets have come out individually on the Vestron line.
Right.
There's a few holdouts that they haven't done anything with.
Yeah, and if you look at this, we'll kind of break it down a little bit here and go through of all these, because as you can see, there is a common theme. All these movies that have come back out have been part of the Vestron line, which, is owned by Lionsgate as well. So it makes a lot of sense. And when you look at which ones were missing, you're like, wow, I wonder if that's to come, or I wonder if they're like, there's no way we're going to release that. But I mean, Waxwork, boom, we had it. Vestron. Unholy, Vestron. Chud 2, Vestron. Chopping Mall, Vestron. Slaughter High, Vestron. Class of 99, Vestron. But what hasn't hit yet? Ghoulies 3, 976 Evil 2. They're still available. That could definitely be a future title that they're looking at. Check these ones out. Blood Diner. Boom, got it. Parents. Earth Girls Are Easy. These are all Vestron titles. Sundown, Vestron. Here's the 2 that we don't have yet. Fido. Remember that thing?
I don't know.
Fido. And Boy Eats Girl, which I don't really remember much about that one. It seemed like kind of a modern horror movie at the time. I think it came out in 2005. So I don't know. I forget about. I remember the cover, but I don't remember the movie.
Yeah, we talked to Felcher about those. I think those are with another studio now, so that may be the reason that Lionsgate hasn't done anything with those. Fido and Boy Eats Girl or whatever.
Okay. But 976 Evil 2, I think, would be a really cool release if they could put that out, because that's actually surprisingly not a bad flick. I mean, it's okay. I don't
really remember it. I need to go back and check it out.
Yeah, it's all right. But Ghoulies 3 is fun. I mean, who knows where that is at this point, but I think that would be a hot seller for sure.
Ghoulies 3 is still at Lionsgate. So that one could possibly happen, but we don't know anything for sure. But you're talking to Felcher. He's not going to tell us anything definitive, of course, but it sounds to me like that would be a possibility at some point. So hopefully, at some point in the near future, we can get Ghoulies 3 on Blu-ray. I wonder, like, if Lionsgate is thinking about doing any of the Vestron releases in 4K, because I think that would be, for some of those titles, people would probably go crazy.
Well, I think they're kind of missing the boat with this, because what's happening now, and I don't really understand the mindset of some of these companies, and with Felcher kind of working on his own thing now, Vestron's kind of been a little dead the last couple, I'm going to say this whole year. There really hasn't been much out from them, and which is odd, because they were releasing at least 4 titles a year, if not a little bit more. But it's kind of dormant right now, and I'm not sure if it's because, Felcher was really spearheading that whole operation, and because he's kind of working on Trick or Treat and his own thing, I wonder if it's kind of gone to the wayside. But what's happening now is they're basically just re-releasing all this stuff in steelbook form. That's kind of the new thing. And I haven't gone down the road of the steelbook stuff, because I own all the Vestrons, and I'm like, I'm not going to start this collection again. If it was 4K, we'd have a different conversation, right? But why, if they're going to do this in 4K, what a perfect time to be like, hey, we're going to redo some of these in 4K, but we're going to put them on steelbooks now. That would have made way more sense to me than just be like, hey, you're getting the exact same edition, but now it's just a different package. Like, that to me is kind of like, come on, guys. Like, there's a lot of companies that are doing that now, where they just announced Return of the Living Dead and steelbook on 4K. Like, it's already out. So, like, I don't know, if I was Vestron, I would have said, or Lionsgate, I would have said, let's do these Vestron titles in 4K, but we'll put them in steelbook form. And then that would give a little bit more meat on the bone to buy these things. I don't really
Yeah.
understand. They just know we're all double dippers or something. I have no freaking clue.
Well, the first time that Scream Factory did it, at least they did like a 4K
Mm-hmm. Like an
remaster of
upscale
the
or something, yeah.
transfer. Yeah. So this go around, I don't think they're doing anything Scream Factory, but
Mm-mm.
the Vestron ones are essentially the same disc. They're just, in a new case. And for me, most of these Vestron titles, especially the newer ones, I know Little Monsters is out now, and Shivers, which I love. I think that's a great one. But I got those for $7 or whatever it was when they came out. I don't care that much about steelbooks to pay an additional $20 or whatever it is just for packaging. If they priced them closer to what they were originally, maybe some people would bite on it. But
Well, that's an interesting concept too, is not only are they just giving you the same disc with the steelbook packaging, but they are charging a lot more for the steelbooks, because that was what everybody loved about Vestron, is that the price point was really good, right? So now all of a sudden you're like, hey, we made it a steelbook of the same edition, but this is going to be $10 more. That's a lot to ask. But obviously, if you never got the Vestron titles, and a lot of them being maybe out of print, this is the best way to get them, sure. But as a collector who's been there since day one, I'm kind of waiting for the next Vestron title to add to my collection with a little number on the spine and all that stuff. And I really don't know where that line's going right now. And I would hate for it to go back and be like, oh, we're doing a 4K of this. It's like, no, just give me some more titles, like some of these ones we just talked about.
Did they do anything this year so far? Like new releases?
They may have. My Vestron collection's in the other room, but I think they did. They definitely. And the other thing too is that they put out Kickboxer Steelbook, but it wasn't a Vestron title. It was like a Lionsgate title. It was very odd because it felt like
the timing of that was odd too. Yeah, because we talked to Felcher probably 2 or 3 weeks before that was announced, and he had mentioned a director's cut that Vestron may be doing, but then they just threw it out there again on Blu-ray. So
yeah, he mentioned possible 4K. He mentioned alternate director's cut. I remember that, and that's kind of what I was waiting for. And actually, somebody had reached out to me that was kind of helping with the director's cut, and kind of said this is the plan, and it never came in fruition. So I don't know if there's another Kickboxer in the works, maybe, like, or not. But what a weird release to just pop out with like no real meat on the bone, like than the Blu-ray that we already had.
Yeah, I mean, it could be one of those deals where they've got a big stockpile of the Blu-rays and they're just trying to move them. I mean, who knows?
Sure.
But the timing, though, and something I was thinking about here, because we're talking 2012, if we go back to when these sets were coming out, these multi-packs, the physical media game at that point in time, because we were close friends with Felcher, and I think he was looking for possibly another career at this point, because this is pre-Scream Factory. A lot of these studios weren't really doing features on, some of the titles like you were working on before with extra features, commentaries, and all that stuff. So as much shit as I talk about Scream Factory, I think that their startup, it changed the game and led to these other companies like Vestron coming out and, showing that there's a market for these B horror movies, giving them the deluxe treatment, which a lot of people don't realize it, but there were only a few small studios at around this time that was doing anything, special for cult horror movies. And it was becoming the norm where they were on these big these multi-packs for $10 and just kind of thrown out there, which is another interesting thing to talk about because, from 2012 to probably, 2014, 2015, Scream Factory was killing it. I mean, you can go back and check out the videos that we did with the history of Scream Factory. Man, they were cornering the whole market there. So I mean, it's insane to look at, these studios and what they were doing in 2012. Fast forward, what was it, about another 4 years is when the Vestron line started, and they started doing special editions themselves. So it's pretty cool to think about.
Yeah, and it is interesting because both these packs and Scream Factory came out around the same time, the 2012 time. But because as you were starting to talk about Scream Factory kind of changed the game, a part of me was kind of like, do you think something like these packs, helped spark something like a Scream Factory, help spark something like this? Because again, these were so fire for collectors that people must have been looking at them, these other companies, and be like, why is everybody going ape about these junky horror movies on this little pack? Like, I mean, do you think that kind of sparked the idea of like, wow, people actually care that much about these titles, these B movie titles? I don't know. I mean, it could have been a precursor to some of these boutique labels, but you're right. Scream Factory kind of really started out hot. I can still remember to this day being at work and hearing that initial lineup and being like, what is happening? It was incredible. When they dropped that first announcement of like, hey, here's the first wave of titles, and we were like, oh my god, this is gonna be so sick.
Yeah, I think we were in disbelief because, and we were talking about this on the, I guess it's Scream Factory Year One show.
Mm-hmm.
Universal had come out with Halloween 2 and Halloween 3 already, like 2 or 3 months before the announcement, I think. Or it wasn't very long.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, they're coming out with these again, but this time there's tons of features, the nice artwork, the slipcases, and all that stuff. And people couldn't believe it that they were giving, especially Halloween 3, because at that time, it didn't have the revival that it's had over the last 10 or 15 years or so. It was not a loved movie. It was kind of insane that, to a lot of us, that they were doing the deluxe treatment for Halloween 3. But people ate it up, and the whole Lionsgate thing, I mean, it's possible, if you look at what some of these auctions were going for on eBay, they're like, well, people are willing to pay big bucks for these crappy, these low budget horror movies. There might be something to this,
Yeah. And it definitely was. I mean, unless you really were in the know or in the community or really collecting at the time, you don't really, I don't think, can fathom what these things did to the community, because it was like you said, it was bananas. Like everybody I knew that was into horror were basically nosediving into those dump bins like maniacs, trying to like scuffle through it, like, and look, because it was like a needle in a haystack, because none of those bins were organized, right? So you had to literally dig. And I can remember my friend Ryan and I going, and we'd always hit them up because, like I said, I had them, but not only that, I had friends that were like, can you get me some? And all of a sudden now I'm making like,
you're like a
triple,
drug dealer,
quadruple profit online on eBay, and I'm like, shit, I'm gonna just keep doing this. Like,
have you ever found the recently they've had the 4K steelbooks at Walmart in the dump bin, but I've never seen any. I've checked all the Walmarts.
I'll be honest, there's no dump bins at my Walmart anymore, and it's kind of sad, because I go in every time and I'm like, is it somewhere else? Like, there's none. So I don't get all that kind of stuff. I wish I did. I wish I could go through that and find some cool shit, but unfortunately, they don't have them here anymore.
Well, dump bins are a staple here in Eastern Kentucky. People love them.
It was, and they were a huge thing for us as horror movie collectors for DVD altogether. Like, man, I can't tell you how many movies I got out of that damn dump bin. Stuff I knew, stuff I didn't know. I remember like even picking up the Psycho remake out of one of those dump bins because I was like, oh, I don't have this in my collection. It was like $5,
That's how I built a lot of my collection early on, really, because back in the early days, it was the 588 bin is what we called it, but they had it organized in Prestonsburg, man. It was on like shelves.
Oh, really?
And I found out like it was every Tuesday, there was possibly more titles out there. I would get 5 or 6 new titles every week, because in 2000, 2001, getting a DVD for $5.88, that was a steal. I mean, that was very cheap, because most of these new movies, $25, $30 a pop. So even though it was Amityville 4 or Mute Witness or whatever, I mean, it was $5.88.
Right.
So
Now, do you remember at the time when these were released, you said Felcher was already talking about him working on Blood Diner, and all of a sudden now it's being released, and he's kind of like, wait, what the heck? What am I doing all this work for? What the heck is this? I got to find it. Was he kind of doing stuff with Lionsgate at that point in time? Like, I mean, did he, he obviously had no idea these were coming out. I don't think anybody did, but he was with you when you guys were searching for these things. Do you remember like what he was thinking at the time? Like, did he think it was a joke? Could he understand like why we were getting Ghoulies 3 in a multi-pack? Why we were getting 976 Evil 2? Chud 2 is finally coming out. Like, you know,
I mean,
someone that's in the know, was he kind of like freaking out?
I mean, unless he had the best poker face of all time, like he wasn't letting us know. And the weird thing is, he was wanting the Blood Diner one so bad because he had already recorded the commentary track that I think was on the Vestron Blu-ray. That was already done. That was for the original DVD release, I think. And he was wondering, well, did they put that on there? How did they put that on there? I was the one that helped moderate that. But it wasn't on there. They didn't have any extras or anything on any of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, he completely was out of the loop as far as I know.
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. It went from VHS to this multi-pack to the Blu-ray. There was no standalone DVD of Blood Diner. I think it was only in this. So
And
the next
really,
time you saw this was from Vestron a couple years ago.
yeah, the interesting thing too, if you look at these sets, like they're not really any of those movies in the sets were big hits that anybody, like, unless you were a hardcore horror fan, you would know, right? So it's almost like they were testing the waters with these to see, hey, maybe which ones sold more or whatever. And if they did, maybe they would later on down the line get a better release, which, I mean, that did happen for the majority of these. But yeah, I mean, these are just fun. I think it was part of the collectability factor. All kinds of people wanted these. Let's see if I can find them, you know. You really don't get a whole lot of that anymore, unfortunately.
No, you don't get any. And again, it was a surprise, kind of almost a surprise attack. Like all of a sudden someone posts, "Oh my God, I found this in a Walmart bin on a message board." And all of a sudden, you know, Bloody Disgusting's picking it up as like an article, and then all these other companies are putting it out as like a news story, and then all of a sudden it's all over the place, and it's he said, she said, who's going to find it? It almost didn't feel real because you said there was no press releases. It was just kind of like, look what I found, and then people started running with the stories. And like you said, I mean, this was obviously for you guys to be at a convention with all your buddies just hanging out for the weekend. This news drop, and everybody decides, let's leave the convention and go to Walmart and see if we can find these things. I mean, and especially even like Felcher to be like, let's go. Like, I mean, it just seems like it was a pretty big deal for everybody just to load up and be like, we're leaving and we're going to go try to find these suckers now, and then we'll come back. Like, it just seems like it had to have been a big deal for everybody that you're with to be like, let's leave this convention and go find these things, because it just kind of dropped out of nowhere.
It was a topic that at that convention too, people were talking about these sets that were out. I think it had maybe just come out. Those sets did. But the only thing that's interesting that they didn't do like a second wave. It was just this one batch here, and it was pretty much done.
I mean, they kind of did like, all right, so these are the three I have right here. And you can tell they're all the same, right? They're all that same kind of color. Horror Collection Pack, 8 movies, 6. This other one. Now, I do have a couple other packs that they did. All right, so these are from Lionsgate. They're kind of different. They did put out some extra ones. Like you said, I think there was one with Reanimator on it, Beyond Reanimator. I don't have that.
I don't remember what else was on it, but I'm pretty sure that I've got that somewhere.
So it's Lionsgate, and this is a 4-movie pack. It doesn't have the same like horror logo at the top. It says 4-film pack. But you got a cool movie here, Drive Through. This is a real cool movie. There's another movie called Creep. Boy Eats Girl is on there again. Remember this movie, Tamara?
Yeah.
Remember that one? It was actually pretty okay. It was like, these are just kind of like random 2000s Lionsgate original kind of movies.
Mm-hmm. I think that was Jeffrey Reddick, his follow-up from, I don't know if he directed that, but he was the
Final
writer
Destination
on it or something like that. Yeah, Final Destination.
Yeah. So that was this like little 4-pack or whatever. So this is, but when you look at the spine, it basically is all, it's written exactly the same. It's just a different color. And then this one's the same thing, 4-film collection. I mean, this has got Bruiser, it's got
I
Godsend,
remember seeing that one, yeah.
Dark Town, and Modern Vampires. And
It seemed like they couldn't give Godsend away. Like that was always in the 588 bin. It was on multi-packs.
every time
like,
I go into like my thrift store, I see Godsend. Every single time I'm like, yo, Godsend is here, like every time.
I think me and Uncle Bill saw that in the theater back in the day, oddly enough.
I almost feel like I
Whatever
did
year
too.
that came out.
It Godsend was
Dakota Fanning is in that, right?
2004. It's got who's in Godsend? See, a lot of these ones like Robert De Niro is in it. I don't see Dakota Fanning on here.
Maybe she's not in it. Maybe I'm confusing it with somebody else, but
Rebecca Romaine Stamos. But it's just funny. It's De Niro. Like it's a De Niro flick. I don't remember it because there was so many that came out around this time that like they all just a big blur to me. You know, there was a lot with like Johnny Depp, and then you had I'm trying to think, there was a lot of those movies around that time. Like remember all the other ones, like the I have a bunch right here. Some were okay, no one ever talks about them. Was like what was the one, The Forgotten? Remember that one with the girl like was abducted by like an alien? They had that one. They had White Noise. Like there was so many movies.
It'd be
like
an interesting year in review to go back. Yeah, maybe 2004 year in horror or whatever, because that was like before we did the show. I don't think we've ever talked about that, so that might be an interesting one.
That might be a good show for us to do because I'm doing right now a series on 2000s horror. So I did 2000, 2001. My next one is gonna be 2000, 2003. Maybe when I get to 2004, 2005, you guys can come on and we can talk about it because that's where I kind of feel like a lot of these movies were, like Dark Town, Godsend, like I said, the Forgotten, like a bunch of those movies that came out around that time.
What was the Lindsay Lohan horror movie that came out around that time? I Know Who Killed Me or something like that.
Oh yeah, I Know Who Killed Me, or Double Jeopardy or something like that. Like like there was one that she was in. There was so many of those, like just random kind of throwaway ones that you may have like a famous actor in it or something like that. And like who was in White Noise? That was who? That was Bruce Willis. No, it was Keaton. Keaton. Yeah. So that's just it's wild.
Dude, I've never made it through White Noise all the way through.
I saw it at the theater, but I've never seen it since. And I've
tried a couple of times for whatever reason, but I just couldn't do it.
You know why? Because fear.com. Well, that one's another one. But White Noise, because it's white noise, it puts you to sleep. That's what
I guess. Yeah,
it's like
it definitely
because you're sleeping to white noise. You're like, shh.
Yeah.
There was so many, man. I wish I could think of them off the top of my head, but that would be a great show to do, is talk about those kind of random, like, I don't even know, half horror movies. I mean, it was kind of more like thrillers, I guess, but there was...
Yeah, the psychological thriller was big around that time.
Yeah, for sure. But, I mean, I wanted to really touch upon these because I do, think that when it comes to physical media history, these were a big deal, man, in the DVD days. And, I'm not saying that people need to go out and get these because you pretty much got everything except for 976 Evil 2 and Ghoulies. But I think from a standpoint of what these kind of did for the horror genre at the time, I
wonder what these are going for. Is this become a collector's item at this point yet, or no?
I can find out right now, but I highly doubt it. But I'm also curious to see what else is out there. So movie.
One that's interesting though that I wanted to mention, we were talking about VHSs a little bit earlier because I see it right behind you. The Nightmare on Elm Street VHS set. And then a couple of months after that was the DVD set. So probably 10 years ago, or maybe even less than that, you could get the VHS set for next to nothing, hardly. And then the DVD set was still kind of higher to, 50 or $60. And it's done a complete reversal, because the first set that I had was the VHS set, like you got back there. And I was like, oh, I want that set back. It's because the spines are Freddy or whatever. with the arms. I was like, I want to get that set again, right? So now it's like $70 to $100 or whatever you're looking at on eBay, and I'm like, what the hell?
I'm telling you, man, VHS
It's
and anything
crazy.
collectible when it comes to physical media, things that made a difference. Like, you know, even the Anchor Bay tins, like all that stuff is coming back around and becoming more of a collector's item for a
Yeah.
lot of people. And coming into and checking these out, I mean, they look like they're going for like $20, $15. But there are a couple other ones that I'm finding here, and I don't think maybe I had this, but I got rid of it because I owned all these. But this was another one you must have been talking about. This is Horror Collection 6-pack. It's red. It's not really the same color, but it's got Bride of Reanimator, Beyond Reanimator, Night of the Living Dead 3, Return of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave, and Night of the Living Dead 3D with what's his name in it there?
Sid Haig.
Sid Haig, yeah. So there, there was this one too,
Yeah,
which
that
actually
I've
that
got
the
that one
movies.
somewhere. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
one
I
I
mean
was
it's not a
remembering.
bad little 6-pack to be honest. You get both Reanimators and you get all the sequels basically besides two of Return of the Living Dead, and then you get that shitty 3D one or whatever.
That's the one that everybody was finding at Walmart at the Horror Hound Weekend show that we were at. I think that was the one everybody got. So there
Because
was
that
an
was the other one
abundance of
there.
those. Yeah,
But it's
but
interesting. This one sealed right here, 8-pack, $60 of the 8-pack one that we just talked about. But I mean, guys, if anybody's like watching this, that is like, oh, you know, that's pretty cool. I guess it's a piece of horror history when it comes to DVDs and physical media. And hey, maybe you want to check out 976 Evil 2. You can get it for a good price on eBay right now. And again, I'll showcase it one more time. This is the big 8-pack one. This is the one that's got Ghoulies 3, 976 Evil 2, which is still waiting to come out. And this is the 6-pack, the other one that everybody was after, specifically for Blood Diner. That was the other one that everybody really wanted. Those were the big two that really got everybody kind of fired up. But yeah, like I said, I want to just kind of bring you on because I knew your story of being at that convention, being with Slippy, knowing his, you know, history with these movies, and everybody basically dropping what they were doing for the weekend and said, all right, we're going to go to Walmart and just, you know, dive in these big bins and see what we can come up with. And like you said, you guys went to a bunch of places and you didn't really come up with much, huh?
no, it was at least 3 or 4 different Walmart stores, and like I said, it was that red pack that you were mentioning with the Return of the Living Dead and the Reanimator. I think all the stores had those. But yeah, Blood Diner I think was the most difficult one to track down of those three. But I think part of it is, you know, the chase is better than the catch or whatever, I think is the phrase. Like it was just fun to go out and try to find these. And like I said, most of those movies had never been on anything before.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, to see finally Blood Diner on a disc, that was sort of a big deal. And, you know, some of those 976 Evil 2, you know, the
Yeah.
Unholy, stuff like that. I mean, that was pretty cool to finally get, you know, on something other than a VHS tape.
Yeah, it was actually a lot of these were the first time I'd ever seen some of these movies. Like I had never seen Chud 2 before this. 976 Evil 2 I'd never seen before this. So it was a big deal, especially because, you know, you're finding movies that just weren't really accessible at that point in
Mhm.
time in 2012. So very, very cool. I mean, I'm hoping that maybe we see some of these titles, these cool 80s ones at least, get put on Vestron. I'd love to see them do a 976 Evil 2, a Ghoulies 3. I mean, I would actually love a Ghoulies box set, but I know that there's a big problem with who owns what on that front. But that would be pretty cool. But I know MVD is doing a lot of the Ghoulies stuff now, and who knows if they can get access to 3. But I know you said Lionsgate supposedly still has it.
That's what I heard. And there is a Ghoulies 4, which I've never
Mm-hmm.
seen. I don't know if
I
it's any
have
good or
it, but I
not.
really can't remember much about it.
Yeah.
I have it on DVD. It did have a standalone DVD. I think this one is the only one that didn't have a standalone DVD.
Usually, if you don't hear anything about a particular movie, there's a reason. But I've never
Yeah,
seen it,
it's
so
I've seen it, but I really don't recall it. They look very different too on the cover of the thing. It almost looks like they changed the look a little bit of the creatures and stuff. So, but man, this was cool. And you know, I've been really dropping these kind of history of physical media shows on Saturday morning. It seems like people like to wake up and hear us jabber about the olden days in collecting. And like I said, what a better person to bring on than someone else who was there and can talk to me about what they were going through, because again, we knew each other back then, but like not like we do now.
Right.
And we were in different parts of the US too, so it was just interesting to see kind of how things were there versus here.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's always fun to talk about this sort of thing. And we always say on the Dead Pit show, we like to go back there if only for a day. Right. So it's crazy to think, though, that we're getting nostalgic for, it was 10, 12 years ago or whatever it was, and we're getting nostalgic for that time period.
It is crazy, man, because I'm in such a weird mindset. Like my head is like pre 2000 is like old. Post 2000 is in my head is still like kind of new, which is fucking wild because that's 25 years ago. But I don't know what it is. I don't know if it has to go with like kind of like I went from like kid to adult around that time, or maybe that's why I'm separating the two. But even someone the other day when they were talking about Strangers being remade, and I'm like, that's absurd. That movie just came out, and it's like it's really been out like almost 20 years. Really, like it's really not
crazy.
It's not really that new. And I'm like, why would they come out with that? It's freaking new. Like it's weird how I don't know if you get that way, but like it's wild to me to see how long ago, like even 2012 was like 12 years ago.
Man. I think of stuff like that from time to time, like. I'd posted on Instagram, this has been a week or two ago or whatever, that my Dawn of the Dead Ultimate Edition, I had the receipt in there from when I bought it still. And I thought that was so cool. And, it was September of 2004, 20 years ago. So in retrospect, if it was 20 years from 2004, it would have been 1984.
Right.
So that's
just wild, man. Because like I was a little kid 20 years, like it just makes you feel like, wow, dude, we're getting old. And when you brought up Dawn of the Dead, like I don't know if you're the same way, but like that brings me back to I know exactly where I was when I got that. I know I was at my uncle's house. It was a Tuesday. Him and I went to the store. We picked it up. We were both so happy. We were looking at it. Then I think went to his house and worked out. I mean, it was like a normal Tuesday for us, and it was buy horror movies and work out on that Tuesday. I'd go get them during the day. I'd bring them home. He'd give me money for his half of it, and then we'd go work out. And it was, to think like how long ago that was, it just drives me nuts because it does not feel that long ago to me at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else out there that feels the same way, but I guess you have to be our age to, I guess, really understand that, because at that point, 20 years ago, I was already done with school. And that is what's nuts. And guys, anybody watching this live and anybody checking this on the replay, let us know, were you around for this? Do you remember this madness? And if you did, I would love you to put in the comment section your story behind these. What do you remember about these? Were you looking for these? Like, I want to know what other people remember about these Lionsgate horror packs, because again, it was something I knew I've wanted to talk about this for a long time. I just didn't know when the right place and the right time was, because it was such a unique situation in the physical media game. And I appreciate everybody checking this out on this Saturday morning. Make sure to go check out Dead Pit Radio over on YouTube. And we are going to do the next big video that we have coming up is later this month. And it's the 2024 Horror Physical Media Hall of Fame. We do it once a year where we take all different physical media releases in the horror genre. We go back again and we talk about some of these nostalgic, cool releases that maybe you guys had, maybe you guys wanted, and maybe you guys didn't even know existed. So, man, thank you again, dude, for doing this with me. I totally appreciate it, as always, my man.
No problem at all. It's always fun to talk about this sort of thing, and everybody keep it creepy.
And this is Garrett at Born2beRad, and like always, stay